gratifying to see so many people. Thank you so much for coming along and listening. I think I'm preaching very much, having seen the illustrious list of supporters of the charity fund that are here. A warm welcome to those of you that are about to join the company. And one of the things that you'll find you're about to swear when you stand in front of the master, hopefully, is that you will contribute to the charity fund according to your means, and that is the way it's described. It's a hugely important part of the modern livery companies, and having said that, it has always been an essential part of what every single livery company, not just the glass sellers, actually does. And it was quite interesting, and I'm sure whether our esteemed past archivist, or I'm not quite sure what your term description is, Edgar, but your esteemedness in terms of the history of the company. Everybody always says the charity fund was set up formally sometime in the 1970s, and of course that's true. But having looked at some of the very early information of the company, the very first record of the charity was actually on the 24th of March, 1698. So a wee bit before the 1970s. And in that, and I'm sorry she's not here this evening, the renter warden of that particular time was instructed to look in our poor box. And for those of you, again, forgive me, I know many of you know what I'm talking about, but we have an amazing historic poor box of that period. The poor box contained 3 shillings, which I'm sure was a small fortune in 1698. Sadly for the renter warden, they were instructed to add a further 2 shillings at that point, and that money was distributed to 2 individuals, I assume 2 and 6 each in old money, and that is the very first time our charity was mentioned. So it goes on, and the story goes on a great deal more from there. James Hayes in the 1820s, and in fact, actually, it's interesting that James Hayes bequeathed £200 to the company for the benefit of the poor of the company. Now, I don't know quite how that's described these days. I think what we tend to do is give bunches of flowers to people that, you know, are feeling unwell, or you know, have had various challenges, or indeed have done something very good for the company. And in fact, in the September dinner in 1821, John Blades, who was a member, a liveryman of that time, added a further £210 to the fund. And of course, with it being 1821, I'm sure those of you good at maths, not me, James Armitage, I'm sure will have figured it out. It's the 200th anniversary of James Hayes. We also have an Abbott Scholarship. This was to grant originally to and assist Oxford students with their living expenses. Now that's been very recently, in the last 2 years, extended to the Russell Group of universities. And then, of course, more recently, part of the great Stuart Crystal dynasty, Frederick Stuart, bequeathed money to the company for education. And I'm really just mentioning this just to begin with, to describe the breadth of our charity and what it actually does. So it's now an ideal opportunity, and I'm very grateful to both the clerk and to Demir, who have put together a short presentation, which you can have a look at, and then I'll carry on. So over to the clerk. Thank you.
All right, darling.
Well, I suppose at that point, there's really little point in me saying any more, but thank you, Paul. Thank you, Damir. To me, charity is the fundamental of everything that underpins what livery companies do and keeps us relevant. I'm quite honoured to have my former chairman, Professor John Whiteman, here this evening, who loyally served the charity fund for a 14-year period, and we've got an awful lot to do to follow him. But the purposes of the company's charity fund are totally consistent and will remain consistent, as far as I'm concerned, forever. We're here to support the wider glass industry, the city, its specific appeals, the Lord Mayor's appeal, and the less privileged in and around the City of London. And of course, then this one word that is embraced so much these days, but is education. And educating our young people into the uses of glass, its sustainability, and of course, our immediate past master, as we know, heading up Glass Futures, with the hope that glass can become the perfect sustainable material for the future. So in terms of a proposition that our company has, I believe that the charity is as relevant today as it was in 1698 when it was first mooted. Yes, it's there to help people. Brings me on to the point of people. This charity would not exist without the livery. Full stop. There is nothing more, and it's my aim to take forward the work that John began, because I can remember, much to my frustration when I first became a trustee, of people saying, well, we don't really know what the charity fund does. I hope that none of you, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted this evening, but all I can ask is that you become and continue to be ambassadors for our charity fund, particularly with the new members that are going to be joining us in the future times. And we have a long list of them. And it's important that people do understand and also get thanked regularly. So I thank you all for your contributions to the charity fund, whether you do it regularly or whether you do it for specific reasons. It is fundamental to the future of the work that we do. And it's my belief that whilst we have the amazing trusts that we have, James Hayes, Frederick Stewart, Abbott, these are very historic and quite specific. I hope that in the future, the breadth of the education and spreading the word of the uses of glass is going to become the focus of our charity. And it's very gratifying, and I'm sure you notice the very significant work that is being done by the Glass Committee, British Glass, Glass Futures. Of course, we have Matt Demon, we have our own Prime Warden, who are movers and shakers in that particular world. Matt having taken over the presidency of British Glass of recent times, for those of you that aren't aware. And of course, Barbara, who has been a long-standing board member. So the networking of the glass sellers as such, I think, continues to grow. But I would hope, and I want very much, and my focus, as far as I'm concerned, is to continue to shout from the rooftops the extraordinary work that your money and your charity continues to do. And having listened, and of course we're all very familiar with the Great 12 and people like that who have millions of pounds to give away. We give away, as I'm sure many of you are aware, about around £60,000 per year. Part of that comes from our investments, but of course a very important share of that comes from liverymen themselves. And it is hugely, hugely important that we continue building on that part of giving to secure the future of our company and its charity fund. You've seen, and it's lovely to see Andy Brockett here this evening, the work done with our affiliates. Andy works, as many of you know, with the cadet group. Fantastic. I think every master that ever goes to see the cadets sees the extraordinary contribution, and our contribution, quite frankly, is very, very small, but nonetheless the value that it gives. And for those of you that know me well will know I'm very much into good value. It is the real value of the money. It's not necessarily a large sum of money that makes the difference. It's actually what impact does it have with the individuals. And I'm sure Andy would confirm, and those of you, of course, that have been to the cadets camp will know only too well that from students and young people in inner city areas, in very challenging environments, 2 weeks in the country, having a wonderful time, but in a very disciplined and structured environment, really does help their future. Of course, our affiliations with HMS Artful and RAF Leeming are of great value to the charity fund, and it shows the strength and again the association of the city itself and with our company and charity fund. You saw, of course, the many aspects of the city that we also support: St Paul's, Guildhall Library, the Lord Mayor's Charity Appeal, the British Legion. It goes on. I won't repeat them all. You'll recall having seen many of the brands. These, again, I think demonstrate the relevance and validity. And we've all heard Lord Mayors stand in front of us at the Mansion House at our banquets and so on, when we were able to do those old-fashioned things like having dinners together, and talk about the importance and the relevance. And it's my desire, and it really is my desire, to continue, as I've said, the work of Professor John, and ensure that our charity remains relevant. All the things are good, and all the things I've mentioned so far, I think we can all see the relevance as a city livery company. But now we go so much further. And as I'm sure you're all aware, very close to my heart is the Glass and Society Initiative, where we go into schools, we give sums of money for projects, usually funding apparatus, kit that, quite frankly, they could never afford. The irony that I'm sure many of you have heard me say before, but it is a considerable irony, bearing in mind the huge sums of money that are being thrown at our economy and people at the moment, courtesy of the pandemic. But schools, and primary schools in particular, are expected to teach science, and they have no budget to do so. They are expected to deliver their children to secondary schools with a rudimentary understanding of science, but they have no kit. And so it truly is amazing that your money and the work that you give to the charity fund allows us to reach so many young people as a result of Glass and Society. And in fact, we have just approved, the trustees had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we had an application from the West Midlands where just about £1,000 will reach 3,000 children, over 3,000 children. It's quite extraordinary, really. Very, very gratifying. And basically it's done by them sharing the resource. I'm sure many of you will know that primary schools work together as a group and then feed the secondary schools. And so what they're actually doing in this particular group is sharing the resource, and we're encouraging all of the schools that work with us to do exactly that. So the value for money, the value for what you give, is absolutely colossal. Now, of course, at the moment, we have some interesting new challenges. And in the last year, we have really struggled to give money away. Not in the sense that we don't have applications. We've had plenty of applications. But of course, trying to get the money to individual schools has been a very different proposition. And so we're now changing the manner in which we interface with our schools, and very much along the lines, none of you will be surprised to hear, I'm sure, using high technology and the kind of Zoom presentation that we're using this evening. Once upon a time, of course, you will know that the master of the time, or the chairman of the charity fund, or me, would go along to a school, present a cheque. Goodness me, a cheque. Yeah, well, those old-fashioned bits of paper, I used to actually make the children laugh, because I asked them whether or not they actually knew what it was that I was presenting to the school. Delightfully, most of them seemed to know, and delighted when they could see the sum that was being presented. But of course, these days, you know, since the pandemic, this is not possible. So apart from the fact that we can't actually go into schools, we have to deal with them in a different way. So it's produced a new challenge. So what we're intending to do, and what we are beginning to do now, and Christ the King School was the very first example of this, is that we engage with the senior teaching staff, the member of staff that obviously has made the application, and indeed, hopefully, some of the students too, to have an online presentation. Of course, once upon a time, we would have expected a written report. Well, that's lovely, and of course, we would still expect that now, but in today, and you'll find more and more of these will be coming into your inbox, courtesy of Demir and the Clark. You'll have seen many of the YouTube presentations of the work, and indeed the things that we do in the company. And this, of course, is the future. This is the way. I suspect probably none of us would be surprised to think of children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, possibly in some of your cases, being very, very well versed in the use of a mobile phone, a tablet, and being able to produce a live report and presentation of their work. And so this is the way forward. We also, which we haven't done in the past, we're going to be giving certificates. So much of school life these days is judged by Ofsted on, have you got a piece of paper that says you've done something? Sad but true. And so we're sending completion certificates to each and every one of the Glasson Society schools. Now, originally, when I first was asked to take on the mantle of looking after Glasson Society, we started with maybe 1 or 2 schools. Now we're operating with at least 20 schools per year now. And of course, as you've obviously understood, the one application that I was referring to was for 12 schools working together. So you can see the reach of your money, of where it's going, and the impact that it actually has is quite extraordinary. And for those of you that are new and soon to become liverymen, and well, freemen first and hopefully liverymen immediately after that, please let this be an encouragement to you. If you can afford to assist and help this charity fund, not only is it gratefully received, but it does change children's lives and affect a lot of people. We're not an organisation, we're not one of the livery companies that believes in huge sponsorship of one individual. We are very much of the belief that we help as many as we can. And to that end, there are many ways of giving. Of course, you can give by standing order, direct debit, all of the good things these days, but you'll have noticed as well, and I know that Clark sent it out, in fact, in the email mentioning this evening, Amazon Smile. You'll all be familiar with Amazon. I have absolutely no doubt at all, wherever you happen to be in the UK at the moment, they seem to be doing quite a lot of business. Delightfully, Amazon Smile, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a device. It's exactly the same website. It's exactly the same as the rest of Amazon. But what it allows you to do, and allows us to do, is to have a very, very small amount and a donation given to us by Amazon for each and every purchase that you make. I would urge each and every one of you, if you haven't got an Amazon Smile link to your computers, please, please, can you look? It costs you, me, anybody else, absolutely nothing whatsoever, but it gives a contribution to our charity. Of course, moving on again to the high technology world, Just Giving is another way. If you have friends that come to our dinners, enjoy the experience, please feel free, encourage them, tell them what we do, spread the word. It's an amazing story, and I hope in the future it's going to become even more amazing. So I think I've said an awful lot in that time. If anyone has any questions, queries, challenges about what we do, perhaps about what you can do to help us, then I'm only too happy to try and answer those questions. Or alternatively, I'm happy to take them to the trustees and we can see exactly how we can move this charity forward in your name. So thank you very much indeed for listening. Open the floor to any questions.
Can I just say one thing, really backing up what Lee has said, and that is, whilst I was in charge of the charity fund, I took the view that the big thing was leverage, and everything you've said, Lee, roughly, involves leverage. And some of it's quite interesting. If you take the cadets, it costs £180 for each cadet to go to camp. And we actually give 115 to 12 cadets. And the CO of the cadets wouldn't let me ask the trustees to give the whole £180. He said, no, the value comes with enabling the cadets to go to camp, but the parents or whatever must realize that they need to make a contribution. And that goes really all the way through what the charity fund does. And that 60,000 is just a sort of baseline from which comes all the activities when they're leveraged with lots of other things. And that way, I wouldn't even begin to put a value on what we do, but it's vastly more than 60,000.
Yes, that certainly is. Thank you, John.
Can I just say, because I'm going to have to go. So thank you, Lee. I've much enjoyed that. But supper is beckoning, I have to say. So thank you.
You have to feed the invalid, so enjoy that, John. Good to see you.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, John. Have a good supper.
So, any questions, queries, or challenges, or have I frightened everybody to death? Shall we talk about the weather?
Well, it's a bit wet where I am, but you've done a great job, Lee. Thank you very much indeed. In my day job, I came across the chief exec of the Ogden Trust earlier this week.
Yes, indeed.
Claire Harvey, who first of all asked to be remembered to the worshipful company of Glass Sellers Charity. And I have no idea to what extent they have helped you or you've helped them or whichever way around it goes, but she's very keen to get in touch.
Yeah, it's a very good contact that I was lucky enough to make. And it's one of those accidentals.
I've seen that green before, top right, not that one.
The Ogden Trust, for those of you that aren't aware, have worked with us. They are a very wealthy trust, which are primarily physics-based. They provide funding or part funding for schools to produce or have within the school what are called Phys labs, in this instance PHIZZ labs. I was lucky enough to work with
Sorry, we lost you for a moment, Lee.
Oh, right. Am I working now? Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, fine. And I was introduced by one of the lead teachers, who in fact has actually come back in on the scene, a lady called Amanda Poole, who had a Phys lab in this particular school in Leamington Spa and applied to us for funding. And that gave me the contact of the Ogden Trust. The Ogden Trust are extremely wealthy. I think they they give in the order of, well, 7 figures certainly per year. I'm not exactly sure what their current giving is. It's a family-based trust, and they continue to provide support for education in physics. So you can see with the way that we've gone with Glaston Society, it was a very logical fit. So I met up with one of their senior people in London, and subsequently we started really networking more than anything else. They work very closely with STEM, which is the organisation, for those of you not familiar with the acronym, Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics, which is based at York University. And all of a sudden, from our little charity being doing what we did, we're then catapulted to national recognition all of a sudden through the STEM organisation. So of course what this meant was there were opportunities for us, provided we could fund it, and I say that very advisedly, provided we could fund a broadening out of our reach from schools in London, and then subsequently, because I was based, as many of you may know, in the West Midlands, we then worked in the West Midlands. Andy Brockett then was good enough to start developing the Hampshire area, Hampshire, Dorset, Isle of Wight, and of course many of you will remember Tony Thatcher, one of our trustees from the past, worked with the Isle of Wight schools on the projects to design boat hulls. Subsequent to that, again courtesy of the networking, we now have opened up the northwest of England, and this I think is quite relevant from the conversations I've had with the immediate past master. As you know, the Glass Futures development is going to be in St Helens in the northwest, and we already have schools courtesy of Matt and Karen Demon. They've been kind enough to look after those, and we are beginning to network in the northwest of England. As a result of our association with RAF Leeming, we've also started and begun the process of working with schools in the northeast of England. Recently, I've received a very interesting proposition from the Kernow schools down in Cornwall. So our name is being stretched far and wide across the United Kingdom, and also as a result of my former life at Caithness Glass, one of my former colleagues at that company works in a special school in Aberdeen. So I keep mentioning the fact that we're doing all of these things, but of course this costs money. And I hate to say it, I hate to bang on about it, but every single thing that you can do to help or spread the word, more importantly, thank you for what you do, but we need to do so much more. And we have the conduits to be able to do that through the likes of Ogden and others too. So that's probably a long-winded answer to the question, but that's our association with Ogden. And yes, I will be very happy to get back in touch with them again now.
Would you like?
Jenny clearly has a question.
Yeah. Lee, I've always admired all the work that you've done getting so many schools involved, which I think is really important. And I particularly remember going to the Isle of Wight. There was a whole group of us went. And if in the future, any schools can be visited by members of the livery company who are not necessarily involved with the charity fund, I think it would bring it closer to people. So maybe we need to know where all these schools are, and if people are particularly interested or live in the area, could they get in touch with you, and perhaps when we're all out of lockdown, make visits, because I think this is what people enjoy and would make it come closer together with the livery. Is that something that you could, perhaps think about in the future?
Jenny, thank you. Thank you for the points. I couldn't agree more. I know, and I had this conversation with Michael some time ago, and it's always been my dream to develop schools. And I guess if we're going to get a decent number of the livery, they're probably likely to be in London somewhere. However, we reach far and wide with our membership across the country, and I have no problem. I mean, obviously, at the moment, we're completely stymied because not only visits are not allowed, they're not even open. So it does make it much more challenging. The other thing that I would like to do, and I have in mind, Jenny, is that I know a number of liverymen have been very, very generous and have contributed the kind of sum of money that would fund a Glass in Society project. And I would actually like to see us looking to develop almost a personalised approach whereby, let us say, you were able to assist the charity fund, you could have your own school, so to speak. Yes. I think that would be quite an interesting proposition. And might be appealing to a number of people. So that's something that's watch this space. We're
sort of sponsorship of the school. Like,
absolutely right. So not only does it, obviously it will be in the name of the charity fund, but it will be very specifically in the name of an individual or a group of individuals. It could quite easily be, it doesn't matter.
Because I thought it was very good, but we actually visited the Isle of Wight, places that we didn't know, and we went to Norfolk, and it opened our eyes to other areas of the country that were not local to us. I thought
Indeed. Yeah, no, it is. Thank you for that. I couldn't agree with you more. And yes, that is the intention, to go on a little bit further as well. So yes, if we can personalise individual projects, then I think that would be hugely beneficial. People then understand there's no question about what does my money do. The answer is,
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Hi, it's Mark here.
I know, Mark. How are you?
Some of you may know that I used to work for Google. And in my role at Google, I did a lot of work with schools and universities. And all of the tech companies are very, very keen to be involved in giving money to STEM education. And I just wondered if you have, if you either have or if you've thought of reaching out to those sorts of organisations in terms of getting money from them.
Well, it's an extremely good point, Mark. Thank you very much. The short answer to your question in terms of Google and the technology companies is no, we haven't yet. I think it's extremely important because obviously they have huge sums of money, as you know only too well, having been part of the organisation. And also this social responsibility ticket that everybody talks about, of wanting to try and sort of be seen to contribute. We have, and John Whiteman's gone now, but John has stayed on and is staying on as a trustee for another couple of years, partly to head up the overseeing of our financials. He has a team of bless him, it was three people, Jenny. Michael, Nathan and Tony Thatcher working with John to look at the actual finances of the charity fund, working with Charles Stanley, our investment organisation. John has also agreed that he is going to apply to other trusts, obviously demonstrating what we've done. We have already been successful through one of his contacts in Coventry. There's a rather bizarrely named trust called the 29th of May 1961 Trust, which was the day somebody died, actually.
And I pressed camera.
They have given us money for Glass in Society projects, specifically in the West Midlands. But this is an ongoing process. And of course, yes, we will most certainly be looking to develop where we seek funding. We cannot assume that Livery is going to be able to supply all of it, and Google would be a first-class example. And I know that our clerk has already spoken to you, and that the three of us are going to be having a conversation very soon. So I welcome that, and thank you for the point. Yes, definitely is the answer. We need to do that, and we haven't done it to date.
Can I say, Lee, from a personal point of view, when you asked me to present some checks on your behalf when you were stuck in London, the amount of pleasure you get from going into the schools and meeting the children is incredible. And we were invited to go and attend one of the schools' Christmas carol services, and it was tremendous. And we were treated as honoured guests. It really was a great pleasure. So if anybody is interested and they want a little bit of pleasure, they will get an enormous amount.
Well, I'm more than delighted, and Barbara, thank you for saying that, and I really appreciate what you and Richard did. It was hugely helpful to me. But as you say, it's actually incredibly gratifying, the excitement that is generated. And this is why I think sometimes we can all become a bit casual. You go, oh, well, it's only £1,000. To schools, it may as well be £1 million, quite frankly, because the goodwill it creates is quite astonishing. And this is why I'm keen for anyone and anybody here this evening, if you have a desire to interface with schools and to get involved with Glaston Society wherever you are in the UK, please talk to me. I'd be only too delighted. It's something that we need to get more and more of the company involved. Jenny's point was extremely well made. Barbara's, of course, is reinforcing exactly what's been said. And thank you. Yes, please. Anyone would like to have a go? Let's be part of it. It's great fun. It really is truly fun.
On that note, I would say to you all, I hope you're a bit wiser now, or you've learnt a bit more about the charity fund. The fascinating thing is that it's all of us working together that can make this difference. And we are making new inroads. We are starting to reach out further and further to people to make them aware of the work that we do, but at the same time, we have to recognise the work that other people do. And I've been working with the Prime Warden, Barbara, and I have some interesting news in as much that we are already relating to the British Glass Foundation and sharing information with each other and recognising the work that we separately do and appreciating each other. I had a long conversation today with the Secretary of the Contemporary Glass Society, who we do support financially. And they have in fact made us associate members as of today. So we will have an interaction with them. And we have another couple of organisations that Barbara and I are working on, so that we are starting to talk to the greater glass art and industry to get a better presence of them knowing what we do and sharing and respecting what they do, so that collectively, as we go forward, I don't know how many of you have picked up that it is proposed by a large group of glass people. 2002, they are asking for the United Nations to declare 2002 to be the International Year of Glass. And this will be a golden opportunity to promote the whole of the glass industry, the glass art, and everything about glass and everything about what we're about as well. So I'd thank Lee very much for tonight. I think it's been a great sort of eye-opener, and more importantly, I mean, that video which was put together in the last 2 days by Demir, just to give you a pictorial of what and how broad the fund actually covers. There's an awful lot of things that we do, which a lot of you may not be aware of. Now, things to look forward to are, I will be sending out the next day the next wine tasting, the next series of the Taste of the Grape, and we'll be looking at Chenin Blanc and Pinot Grigio, headed by Martin Everett, Master of Wine. And then we have another excursion in early February. I've had to reschedule what I'd originally told you and sent out. The Lady Mayoress, Hilary Russell, will be giving us a presentation about keeping bees on the roof of the Mansion House.
Oh, that's interesting.
We will launch mid-February with the approval of Jenny Nathan, the first of what is going to be known annually as the Michael Nathan Glass Engravers Lecture. And the first lecture is going to be given by Catherine Coleman. And hopefully that will be a charity fundraiser in the memory of all the work that Michael did, not only with the company, but also with the charity fund and also the Glass Engravers, which they are very keen to acknowledge the work that he did. We then go into Heidi Backlow, who is a past winner of the Arts and Crafts Award. Then we're going to do another Taste of the Grape. And then when we move into March, I have some more exciting things happening. So the diary is coming. So reserve Thursdays, 7 o'clock. We are going to be doing some interesting things. And as we get towards the early spring, hopefully we will be able to meet up in reality. But certainly the online meetings that we've been having have proved great benefit. And there's a huge legacy that is being left on our YouTube channel, where you can see many of the recordings and learn more about this, about the company and the work that it does, and see many of the members that participate in what we do.
Brilliant, well done, lovely.
Paul, allow me as master to just say a few words in conclusion.
Please do.
First of all, many thanks to Chairman Lee, as opposed to Chairman Shi, and Paul and Damir for putting together such an excellent and informative presentation, and for underlying the immense importance of the charitable activities of livery companies. And in fact, if it wasn't for their charitable activities over the years, they may well not have existed, because the Gladstone Commission into livery companies, which was basically set up to try and close them down, was so impressed by what they were doing that it recommended they carry on. And here we are today, which is very impressive. Thank you to Lee and to Professor John Whiteman for managing our charities so efficiently and enthusiastically. I think as a small livery company charity, we punch considerably above our weight, and it's really most impressive. And it's wonderful to see how well the assets are looked after. I, in the dim distant past, was clerk to a livery company called the Painter Stainers. And when I investigated their charities, we were trying to amalgamate charities. They had a I came across what had been a very substantial donation by a man called John Stock in 1781, who had risen to prominence by becoming painter to the Royal Docks, made lots of money, and he invented a technique of painting ships' bottoms with arsenic-based paint to keep the barnacles off. And only over the years did it become apparent that exposure to this paint turned his painters blind. So he left all these various donations, and I'm talking about 1781, sums of £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 for poor blind painters, poor lame painters, and various other things. And to my horror, and this was all left in government stocks, they were not managed. To my horror, in the, whenever it was, 1990s, when I was looking into this, I discovered that the value of those bequests had risen from, say, £5,000 in 1781 to £5,500 in 1996. So it is so important that livery companies and their charitable trusts manage their funds properly. And it is wonderful that we do that. But enough from me banging on. Thank you so much, Chairman Lee, for that brilliant presentation. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for your continuing support of our worthy charitable trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
And on that note, I think, folks, you can either go and pour yourself another glass of wine or adjourn for supper. Thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.